Welcome to the Nice Business Podcast with your hosts, me, Jim Bob Howard, a veteran technical consultant, and my good friend, business and leadership consultant and Vistage CEO Peer Advisory Chair, Richard Train of Richard L. Train Consulting. Together we have more than 60 combined years of business experience. The purpose of this podcast is to have short but meaningful discussions about the people and culture side of business and how owners and executives can be both kind and successful.
Thanks, Jim Bob. I want to introduce our guest for this episode, Marty Shirley, who is CEO of Catalyst MedTech. And Marty, why don't you give us a couple of minutes of background on you?
Sure, love to. Thanks for having me, by the way. I started my career as a nuclear medicine technologist providing direct patient care. Today I would still identify as a healthcare worker, though I'm not directly involved with patients myself. I have to live that through an extension of all of the employees of the company, as well as all of the customers that we service and support. So as I grew and evolved in my career through management, both clinically and operationally, into sales management, and all of these things kind of amalgamated into an experience where, towards the end of a company called Digirad, I was running the entire business under the ownership of a publicly traded equity firm. At this point, after Digirad merged with another, I was asked about 7-8 months later to take the CEO role of the current company, which is now branded as Catalyst MedTech.
Great. Well, thank you for that background. And you and I had a prior discussion about this, and really, the focus of our podcast is how do you handle an organization in a positive, people-centered way, and especially in light of a variety of different challenges. And in your particular case, you were dealing with a massive seismic change in your organization because of the merger. And I believe you told me that you had to essentially merge 14 different business groups together, which had to have been a pretty massive undertaking, and there had to be a lot of stress and strain on the people that worked for you. Tell us a little bit about how you managed that, and the condition, the action you took, and then the result.
Sure. I think it kind of starts with a basic philosophy that humans, all of us, you too, myself, we're resistant to change. Even if it's a positive and meaningful change, we still resist it. Kind of understand and accepting that, and thinking about everything about business is personal, which is exactly the opposite of what all the old textbooks and maybe some of the new textbooks would teach you in a business course or an MBA process. I hate the saying, loathe with everything I have, oh, it's not personal, it's just business. Baloney. Look at how many hours we put into this as humans, how important it is for the incomes of all of our families and all the things that we're trying to do. And heck, if you work for a company that has a purpose and you identify with that purpose, how dare you say it's not personal, right? So first, it's just accepting that resistance to change is inherent in being human. I think acknowledging that is a really important step, meaning publicly acknowledge it, explain it, maybe tell the same thing I just told you and Jim Bob, right? And saying, look, we're going to change because it's the best thing we can do. It's the right thing for all of us individually. It's the right thing for all of us together. It's the right thing for our customers and so on. And just explain that this is what must be done because it's the right thing. Acknowledging it's challenging, it's difficult and uncomfortable, absolutely. Listening to people explain their points of view, what they see as challenges, potential obstacles, actually listening, incorporating their feedback into what you will change execution-wise. It's one thing to have an overarching goal of change, but understanding that it's a step-by-step process. Everybody is at a different level of acceptance. Clearly, when I made the yes decision to our ownership group to be the CEO, I was miles ahead of employees who didn't even know that particular change was happening, much less the need for us to change organizationally, culturally, even our business direction, our purpose, our values were redone. Everything was redone But then importantly, making sure that employees have a voice, making sure that they can talk freely directly to myself, anyone on the executive team, anyone that is their manager, right? I kind of loathe the term manager as well. You're a leader, right? You're not a leader because your title is manager. You're a leader because that's who you are as a human. There are leaders who are role players in every organization, whether it's a sports or business venture, even with what you folks are doing, right? They're important and they can show leadership characteristics and help us see the pathway to go on. And then I think that last part's key, Richard, where what I told our company, our employees, was, do I know exactly all the changes? I don't. But together, you guys do. And if you'll be courageous enough to tell me, I promise I will listen. I may not end up agreeing with everything. I may not directionally say everybody's right and we're going to do everything everybody said, but rather I'm going to listen to everyone. And then along with an executive team and some of the managers, maybe a step or two below, together we'll decide what the changes are. What becomes our standard operating procedure? What I like to call what's our wash, which means lather, rinse, repeat, right? And once it's repeatable, now we're in the process change of becoming who we are. Our people told us who we are, including not exactly naming the company, but showing me what our people were. By golly, they're Catalyst. Therefore, that was a natural first name for the company.
Oh, that's fantastic. And I have to point out something that I'm hearing when you're talking about the difference between a manager and a leader. Mm-hmm. Huge distinction. And I think that the one thing that you are describing that is not commonly understood of a true leader is you have to have some vulnerability yourself. Yeah. You have to be vulnerable enough to say, I'm not really sure, but we're going to work on it together. Mm-hmm. As opposed to having to be that person that knows everything about everything. And, that trickle down, stuff rolls downhill, you will do what I say because I say it kind of mentality. And you seem to handle that a completely different way. You flipped it on its head and you put them in control of telling you where their concerns were and what they were needing. So my question to you is, how did you handle when somebody's understanding or their acceptance was not where it needed to be during this change?
I would say with patience would be the first thing, right? With empathy, right? Because what they're feeling, what they're experiencing is very, very real. I may see it completely differently because I have the opportunity to see a much broader scope. However, they have the opportunity to see a focused scope, and I don't. So we exchange those points of view, we talk through it. And I mentioned earlier purpose, right? If you work for a purpose-based company, and so as we define what our purpose is, it's almost like threading a needle. It either fits through that hole or it does not fit through that hole. So sometimes where there was, let's call it a mismatch, the basis of the mismatch was that our purpose didn't quite line up with perhaps that business segment or that small operation that wasn't contributing towards the purpose. Therefore, it's not right, fair, or just for that division to continue on. So sometimes change means we have to look at the things that maybe we're not good at, or maybe that we as a company aren't good at or prolific at, or we can't see a way to go from not good enough to good to become great, and so on. But rather, what do you do with that? So good humans, these are good people. They're good at what they do, but maybe this isn't the right place for certain things. As an example, one of the things that we were able to determine was that the repair and maintenance of linear accelerators wasn't really a great match for us. We had really good people, excellent processes within that niche. It's a very, very small, what I would call somewhat adjacent market space, but it wasn't really in our core competency, and it wasn't in our core competency to grow because of factors within the overall linear accelerator industry that we can't even influence. Therefore, the best thing to do for those people is find them a home with a company that will do a marvelous job for them and the patients that ultimately get served. Because linear accelerator work is wonderful work. It's very valuable work for people that are in need of such services. So we did something just like that.
Marty, I'd love to dig into that just a little bit more. It was kind of festering and kind of bubbling up to the top is how quickly and how much do you tell folks that are going to be impacted, especially in a situation like that, where an entire division needs to be removed from the company, right? Because some folks may be interested in, like, okay, well, if this whole thing is going to be sold, I'd like to go with it. Others may say, no, I want to stay where I was. Is there a way that I can leave that division and be a part of this thing going forward? Or is there something else that I should be doing that's completely separate from all of these? And how do you navigate those types of things?
Yeah, I think first, Jim Bob, it's a matter of being very patient and thorough and not simply rushing to judgment. Maybe the snap decision is, oh, this doesn't fit, this is awful, whatever it might be, right? And let's just, like an unruly house guest, we'll just throw them out the front door. Yeah, gosh, that's not the
Sorry,
case.
you can't stay.
Yeah, that's right. And so, first, make sure you're right. Luckily, the kind of smart I am, I don't assume I'm right. There's some really smart people in the world who assume they're right because they thought it. Yeah, that's not my category. My category is, hey, I'm not sure. This is what I think. Let me get smarter people involved, people who are knowledgeable in that way. Let's collaborate together to come up with what we really think, what should. And once you're definitively clear, okay, now we need to start executing. And I think the second thing we did was we went and found where they should be. And we reached out to a couple of probable matches, kind of narrowed down to one, kind of opted in bidirectionally. And then once we were sure we had something, then we can start the process with the management level and a little bit lower. Can you tell every employee? No, you really can't. Particularly when you're working out something where, in our example, we sold that very small business unit. And it wasn't really about being able to make a profit from it. In fact, I'm confident we lost money doing it. But I'd rather lose a little bit doing the right thing ultimately for other people, because I believe at some point that's going to come back. People will do the right thing that I'll benefit from as well, right? So now we have talked a bit about that. I would like, when you folks are ready, to talk about the things we did to improve what was within our competency range, right? But I just want to make sure you've asked what you wanted to in that regard.
Yeah, absolutely. And as a matter of fact, I do have a question for you about that. But I would like to dig into what you're talking about now. So let's just go ahead and dive in.
Okay. So as you said, ultimately 14 companies came into one. Now, I didn't drive 14 acquisitions since February of 24. Certainly not, right? Before that, 13 companies had been acquired, small regional businesses, really adjacent spaces. Sometimes it was geography made the difference. They were really good small regional companies. I mean, really good. In the industry, I knew who they were. No negative reputations, right? Is all good. But there were 13 different companies representing 13 different processes. And generally speaking, a regional business like that has a dynamo driving it and leading it, right? They've got a personality that is kind of the north of that particular regional business, right? Digirad, which started in 1999, we had a national footprint. We didn't have a regional business focus. We were structured as a platform company nationally. And we were also an original equipment manufacturer. Half the business included direct clinical care at cardiology offices, employing nuclear medicine technologists, stress technologists, performing actual patient care alongside physician practice coupled up with our technical teams. The owners of the prior company, which was TTG Imaging Solutions, bought Digirad and then merged it together. And this was radically different than that. So imagine, Richard, sounds like you and Jim Bob have been friends a long time. Imagine he and his family move into your house, and then his cousin and your cousin and their cousin's wife and all these things, and 13 families are in your house. And then I'm driving a party bus at 250 people, and we all pile in your house, right? Oh my gosh, what's the schedule? Who showers when? Who's cooking breakfast? What's in the fridge? Who can grab which shelf, right? None of it wrong, but none of it aligned. None of it one true north for who this company is. So the company, when I took over, had those challenges. So we had to say, look, who are we? And again, my first address to all employees was, I don't know, but you guys are going to tell me and we're going to figure it out together. And then we started saying, okay, what's the best thing you did at your location, Jim Bob? How about you, Richard? How about you, Bob? How about you, Nancy? How about you, Sally? And then we all got together and said, okay, well then the way we'd like to do it is we'll still a little bit of each recipe, and we'll make our very own wonderful chocolate chip cookie recipe, whatever it might be, right? In our case, these lather, rinse, repeat protocols, processes. How do we do what we do? And boy, there are a lot of things involved with repair and maintenance of medical equipment, the sales of medical equipment, the manufacture of medical equipment, the refurbishment, all these things needed one set of operational manuals, everyone understanding what their role is and how they contributed plays back. Does their contribution tie to the company purpose? That becomes critical because I have to validate with my role. I have to know when I wake up and I go to work that I'm contributing, no matter what your role is. Our IT workers are healthcare workers. Our finance people are healthcare workers. Clearly our nuclear techs are, right? Because everything we do, there's a patient at the end. And we talk about our purpose, which is quality and access through diagnostic imaging so patients get the care and treatment they need. That's why every one of us exists here. And we have to tie back what they wake up and do every day to that purpose. Now, if they can identify with that, they can validate through that, they can contribute to what our processes and our process improvements are. Now we have something going. That's the goal.
So, I mean, we're talking about something that's very real for a lot of companies out there. And there may be somebody that listens to this episode that is going through something similar. And so just from a simple logistical standpoint, as you know, communication and having a plan for communication in such a large change is key. Because I've always been a big believer in making sure that the people that you are communicating with understand the why. Because if they don't understand the why, then they can't get behind the what or the how. And so I imagine that, based on what you're talking about, you had a communication plan for going out to all of these different disparate companies within the company. And let's talk a little bit about what the plan was and what the cadence was and how long did you take to do that, to be able to bring everybody on board and help them with that why?
Sure. I think the first part of the plan was just access and creating the opportunity for humanization, right? They need to understand I'm human. They need to accept that I know they're human also. Right? And the only way that you can do that is by direct communication. And so the only good thing COVID gave planet Earth was a normalization of the fact that we're having a virtual conversation. It's pretty strong. Not quite as strong as if we were all in your living room. We could do what I call watch one another's pupils dilate, right? And you can do that. You can reach over and touch someone on the shoulder as we both laugh, right?
Sure.
You're communicating at a higher level, but this helps, right? Because you can see facial expressions, you can see hand gestures, you can feel
all those nonverbal cues,
which are critical, right?
Right.
A phone call, you never get that, even if you intend to, right? So, my first efforts were to offer anyone and everyone, reach out. I promise I'll get back to you. Probably not today, but I promise I'll get back to you. We'll set up a session. We'll have this kind of conversation. I'll reiterate the things I said in a public forum, in an all employee type of setting, but I'll give you a chance to ask questions and interact with me directly. What I try to do is, when folks are not the type that would reach out, then I got the various executive team members to have their management as a team with me doing this. Then I encourage each of them to have their teams in a meeting like this with me. And I did as many virtual as I could, because I could do it more quickly than if I tried to hop by jet overnight and around the country. Right now, did I do some of those type of travels? Sure. We have a number of facilities that I went to so that I could meet with as many people as possible. I looked at where are the largest collection of employees. Let me try to go there, right? And then followed up with these type of sessions. So the first part of it was, hey, it might take me 3 months. It's not like I said, hey, it has to be 90 days, but I made some reasonable assumptions. You got to have a plan, and it's based on what you know today. You learn different things in day 31. You go, okay, a 90-day plan was too short. It's got to be whatever it has to be, and then we adjust, right? So it's almost as if, one, we as an executive team have to be ready for the concrete decision. It's not something we're already in play. Others were, we generally weren't sure. Right, we weren't sure what was missing and what was this, and there were multiple factors contributing, but they were different regionally. So we had to understand them, identify them, acknowledge them, accept them. Maybe we'll talk about the word accept later, because I think that's important. It's probably more important than the word understand. But it's a matter of being patient enough to create enough connection that when a decision's made, the person hearing the information, if in fact they opted in to be a participant, not everyone did. I can't control that part. I can control offering it. I can't control whether or not someone accepts it. So we did enough of that where once we started to make the change, we had enough equity or credibility built. Remember, half the employees didn't know who I was, for the first 6-7 months that I was at the same company, right? Because a different role, people identified different ways. Some identified as part of TTG Imaging Solutions. Some still identified as Digirad. And then within TTG, you had some that identified as whatever one of the 12 companies they originally got hired by. And boy, they sure do miss Jim Bob, because he was a great guy, right? I'm sorry, Jim.
Well, he is.
I didn't throw him out. So a lot of it also was trying to heal old wounds.
Sure.
And, it's kind of like if you're in a relationship with a friend of yours that was bullied as a child, and maybe he or she overreacts anytime he perceives or she perceives someone's bullying them. They go back to whatever age they were when that emotional trauma happened. And
so true.
You try to heal them by accepting it and saying, hey, I get it, that's valid. Notice that wasn't me. Notice that wasn't this company, right? So part of the rebranding, there's internal value. That's not who we are. This is who we are. External value. Hey, this is what this thing together is and can become, and watch us become this.
Yeah. That's so important to make sure that when people are having trouble with any kind of a transition or change, it kind of meeting them where they are, right? Mm-hmm. And acknowledging that I understand that this is how you feel. They may be wrong. There's no question they could be wrong.
Yeah.
But it's not necessarily calling them out. They still feel how they feel, and you need to make sure that you address that. So that sounds like you did that.
Well, attempted to. That was the honorable intention, right?
That's all you can do is to make that attempt, and hopefully they see that. Mm-hmm. And at some point or another, you have to move on. So I did have another question, but I wasn't sure, Jim Bob, if you wanted to jump in with anything. Okay, well, then I'm going to go ahead and just ask you. So at some point or another, you would have people that did not accept, that weren't ready for it, and you had to part ways. Mm-hmm. And I think that when we had our conversation the other week, you had a beautiful way of doing that. And I would love for you to share that, because there's a right way and a wrong way, in my opinion. I'm not usually a very binary kind of guy, but there's a right way and a wrong way to let somebody go with dignity. And I think that you really nailed it. And I'd love for you to share that, please.
Yeah, well, thank you. It's quite a compliment. I think the context that I would start with is somewhere in my late 30s, early 40s, I came to the realization that people let themselves go. They fire themselves, they terminate themselves. I think there was an in vogue term for a while, quiet quitting, right? Sometimes it's loud quitting and everything in between, right? But because it was really hard when I was younger to say, hey, this person isn't doing what they need to do in this role. And, look, it's always a hard decision, but to carry it with you as a burden isn't the right thing for the manager or executive that has to make such decisions, right? As long as clarity has been provided, right? Clarity is so important, right? So, when someone, let's start with, they want to take themselves out of the organization, and they're kind enough to reach out, or you get a sense through the grapevine and you reach out, and conversation kind of goes like, hey, I understand, Richard, you're thinking about leaving. I just like to talk to you to understand it. I'm not going to try to talk you out of it. I simply want to try to understand, just in case the reason you want to leave isn't actually accurate. Right? Notice I didn't say true. As soon as you say true or false, oh gosh, now you're calling me a liar, you son of a, right? No, maybe it's just not accurate, right? And listen, when it is accurate, you know what, Richard? That's right. What we are today is this. Where we're headed towards is this. Those seem like two things that you don't align with, it. You don't feel validated by. Maybe you would like to work for a small company with 20 or less employees. The range is half of a state. That's great. God bless you. Go do that. I wish you the best. You can use me as a reference, right? Now, when it's the other challenge where you have an employee not performing to expectations, they're not willing to face that reality, right? By the way, who's the biggest liar Jim Bob?
Me.
You, absolutely. And Richard, you're the best liar and same to me, right? It's the thing in us that makes me buckle my pants in the morning and go, I don't need to lose any weight. And then by 2 p.m., I'm like, yes, you do. You do, right? It's part of the way we rationalize our own existence, right? So sometimes we have to help ourselves stop lying to ourselves. Sometimes we have to help other people stop from lying to themselves and say, the easiest example is sales, because sales is very quantifiable. You're supposed to have booked 12 contracts by this point in the year. You've booked 0. So let's just be clear. The expectation is you would have booked 12 contracts by this time. You've booked 0. Those numbers are not in alignment, right? Now, we have a couple of ways to approach this. One would be, how do you feel about this? Does this feel like a fit? Do you feel like you can be successful? Do you feel like you can do those type of numbers after a period of time to kind of reestablish yourself, right? If the answer is yes, okay, now let's start to quantify that. Well, how many do you think you could do? Let's say you have 6 months. How many can you do in 6 months? Well, all right, how many of those can you do in the next 3? What do you have to do to get to that number? Do you see they just wrote their own performance improvement plan? And so if they own it because they created it. And I go on to say something like, well, if you truly believe that, then I will accept that as long as it's fairly reasonable. I don't need you to catch up on the 12. I just need you to head in the direction where I believe and you believe the company can count on you doing that, right? And so when people feel that way and they want to contribute, most, not all, most will go, you know what, thank you. Thank you for showing me what I chose not to look at. Thank you for helping me create the plan that I now own and I will go execute on. And if I don't, it's on me, right? That's the ideal scenario. Sometimes what you get is, no, I thought this was for me. It's not. Thanks for helping me face it. And I don't think this is native for me. I think something where I came from was better. What they did matched what I do. I don't know what it is, right? It could be a circumstance in their household changed. And, anytime a person puts their family ahead of, their job, no problems with that, right? Part of what we have to do is provide for our families, whether it's a single income family, a dual income family, if there's such a thing, a tri-income family, whatever the family is, right? And so providing is a part of that, but family first for sure. And so the reality is I've had reps who've said to me, if I've said, I don't think you can do your plan, I've had reps say to me, you're dead wrong. I'll be your number one performing rep by the end of the calendar year. And in one instance, I had a guy do it. It was fantastic. And he never turned his back. He kept chugging along just as expected. When they're unsure and they're trying to buy time because they want to go look for a job, and I call them out on it in a supportive kind way, I'll say, listen, if you're just looking for a little bit of a safe landing to transition, I'll just give you that. Instead of giving you a 30-day or 60-day plan, I'll just pay you your salary through that period of time, and you start hunting tomorrow, and I'll start looking for your replacement. So we don't have to, look kind of like cheat on each other, right?
Dance around a subject. I think that's very important to be able to address it head on, so that everybody's on the same page. There's no need to lie.
There's probably, I don't know, half a dozen or more people that I've helped improve their lives and their careers by helping them leave.
Mm-hmm.
In my career, they still call me. That's what, not everybody does, but I bet there's 6 or 9 that still call me and say, hey man, things are going great. How are you doing? We maintain a personal relationship because all things are personal, and then there's business.
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
Well, and I love the fact that you really humanize both sides when you do that. When you say, listen, this place may not be the place it's not for everyone. I can't hire everybody on the planet anyway. So you may be one of the ones that this isn't a good fit for, and it's nothing to do with you or us. It's this fit doesn't work. But I still want to be able to help you figure out where you need to go, and then I need to get the next person in here, obviously. And so let's start that process now. Being able to let folks know that, listen, I'm not gonna drop you because you don't want to stay. Here's how that can work, and let me help you get into the next thing, and being a reference for them. I would say I've been in the same situation where I have people that I've had to let go or have been let go, and I help them get to the next thing. And yeah, we still talk. Something comes up, and they're like, hey, I'm really loving where I am, or hey, I'm out of work again, and can you help me with the next thing? And just being able to have that human touch, I think is super important, because you're absolutely right. Everything's personal. And then there's business.
There's a circumstance that happened recently. I won't name names, but we had someone that had left the Didrad company, and for their reasons that were perfectly valid to them and frankly made sense to me. And you know what? That person came back 2 weeks ago. We hired them. Said that now this health and breadth of experience that they can come contribute at a higher level because they went out and learned all these new skills. And though it wasn't said to me, what I understand secondhand is that at the end of the first week, this person said, yeah, it feels like I'm home. Well,
that's fantastic. You gave them some wings, and they flew back. That's a fantastic story. I appreciate that, Marty.
Yeah.
Well, listen, I think we're pretty much close to time. I just wanted to thank you for sharing so much of your experience with us. This is exactly what we're trying to do here, is to share examples of positive ways to go about being in business and supporting your people. And what else it does? It translates to your customers.
Yeah.
They see how you're run, and if they have a shred of humanity in them, they're gonna feel that too.
Right. That's
so.
That's the goal.
Yeah, and so I want to thank you for being here and sharing that with Jim Bob and me, and. So, this has been a great conversation.
Good. If you don't mind, I'll leave you with this. If there's one thing anyone can do, I have to tell myself this all the time too. clarity. You could be strong and be kind. Right? Telling the truth is in fact an expression of love or kindness, whatever term you're comfortable with. So you can be honest and kind at the same time, set clear expectations. The folks who are going to be in this role next month will be doing this. I sure hope it's you, but that's your choice. This is adult consent, right? So, that's just a great way to be and to be treated. But I do want to thank you folks for the time. Clearly, I think there's a lot of like-minded thinking amongst the three of us, and it's always good to hear reinforcement from folks who've been successful as you too.
Well, thank you very much. And listen, I want to thank listeners for listening to this episode of the Nice Business Podcast with our fantastic guest, Marty Shirley. And Marty, thanks for being with us. And if you want to learn more about how to keep your business nice, keep tuning in for more fantastic information. And thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.